Raila Odinga, born January 7, 1945, Maseno, Kenya, Kenyan businessman and politician who served as Prime Minister of Kenya, 2008-13, following the contentious presidential election of December 2007. Of Luo descent, Odinga is the son of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, the first Vice President of independent Kenya. After earning a master's degree in mechanical engineering in East Germany in 1970, Odinga returned to Kenya to become a lecturer at the University of Nairobi. During his time at the university, Odinga also engaged in engineering-related business ventures, including one that would later become East African Spectre, Ltd. He left the university in 1974 and was soon employed by the Kenya Bureau of Standards, where he attained the position of deputy director in 1978. In the 1970s and 80s, Odinga was politically active and supported government reforms in Kenya. In 1982 he was accused of plotting against President Daniel Moi and was imprisoned without trial for 6 years. After Odinga's release, he was twice arrested for campaigning against one-party rule, and in 1991 he sought refuge in Norway. He returned to Kenya in 1992, however, and was elected a member of the National Assembly that year under the banner of the Forum for the Restoration of Democracy, Kenya, Ford, K, the party led by his father. After his father's death in 1994, Odinga became embroiled in a leadership struggle within the party and in 1996 left Ford, K and joined the National Development Party, NDP. 1970, MSc in Mechanical Engineering, Technical University, Magdeburg, Germany, courses at British Standards Institution, London, National Bureau of Standards, Washington, D.C., and University of Denver, Colorado, until 1974, taught in Department of Mechanical Engineering, University of Nairobi, 1975, Deputy Director, Kenya Bureau of Standard, 1982, arrested and detained without trial by government for agitating for restoration of political pluralism in Kenya, 1991, granted political asylum in Norway following threats to his life, party leader NDP and party's presidential candidate in 1997, general election, coming third, 2002, Secretary General, merged NDP and KANU, formed National Rainbow Coalition which won 2002 general election, 2003, Minister, Roads, Housing and Public Works, Kenya, September 2007, Presidential Candidate, 2007, won presidential elections, 2008, agreed to share power under coalition government, December 2010. Appointed by African Union to lead efforts in resolving political crisis in Ivory Coast, joined presidents of Benin, Sierra Leone, and Cape Verde to travel to Ivory Coast with message from Economic Community of West African States for incumbent President Laurent Gbagbo. Mr. Odinga, who served as Prime Minister between 2008 and 2013, returned to Kenya after completing his studies and established Standard Processing Equipment Construction and Erection Limited, later renamed East African Spectre, a company that specializes in the manufacturing of liquid petroleum gas cylinders. He had his first stint in public service in 1974 when he was appointed Group Standards Manager at the Kenya Bureau of Standards, KeBS, and promoted to the position of Deputy Director in 1978 until 1982 when he was detained because of his political activity. He was placed under house arrest for 7 months by the regime of former President Daniel Moi. He was later charged with treason, but was instead detained without trial for 6 years. During his time in detention, his mother died in 1984. Mr. Moi ordered his release on February 6, 1988, but he was rearrested in September the same year and was once again detained. He was released on June 12, 1989, only to be incarcerated again on July 5, 1990, this time with Mr. Kenneth Matiba and Mr. Charles Rubia during the agitation for multi-party democracy. He was released on June 21, 1991, but fled the country for Norway the following November amid fears of another arrest. He returned to Kenya in February 1992, and joined Forum for the Restoration of Democracy, FORD, where he was elected vice chairman of the General Purposes Committee of the party. He was elected Lang'ata MP in 1992 on a Ford Kenya ticket. When his father, Mr. Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, died in January 1994, he challenged Mr. Michael Wamalwa Kijana as the chair of the party but lost. He resigned from Ford Kenya to join the National Development Party, NDP. He contested the presidency in 1997 and finished third but retained his position as Lang'ata MP. After the election, he led a merger between his party, NDP, and Mr. Moi's KANU party. He served in Moi's cabinet as Energy Minister from June 2001 to 2002. In the subsequent KANU elections, he was elected the party's Secretary General as part of the power-sharing deal of the merger. In 2002, Mr. Odinga fell out with Mr. Moi after he endorsed Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta as his successor. Mr. Odinga and other KANU members, including Kalonzo Musyoka, the late George Setatai and the late Joseph Kamotho, opposed this step, arguing that the then 38-year-old Mr. Kenyatta was politically inexperienced and lacked the leadership qualities required to govern. They joined the Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, which later teamed up with Mr. Mwai Kibaki's National Alliance Party of Kenya, NAK, a coalition of several other parties, to form the National Rainbow Coalition, NARC, that eventually defeated Mr. Kenyatta in the 2002 poll. He later fell out with Mr. Kibaki and contested the presidential election in 2007 that was marred by Kenya's deadliest post-poll violence. He was named Prime Minister in the subsequent Grand Coalition that was formed after the peace talks mediated by late former United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan. He also lost the 2013 presidential election to Mr. Kenyatta. After the Supreme Court nullified the poll results, he boycotted the repeat election held on October 2017. He ran for president again in 2022 but lost to William Ruto. Dr. Ruto garnered 50.49% of the vote against Raila Odinga's 48.85%. Mr. Odinga challenged the results at the Supreme Court. However, the 7-judge bench upheld Dr. Ruto's win. The court said it found no evidence of hacking and that no evidence was produced to show that Mr. Kibukati and other IEBC staff were involved. Raila Amolo Odinga, born January 7, 1945, is a Kenyan politician who was the Prime Minister of Kenya from 2008 to 2013. He was the Member of Parliament, MP, for Lang'ata constituency from 1992 to 2013 and has been the leader of opposition in Kenya since 2013. He is the leader of Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya coalition party. Odinga has run for president of Kenya 5 times, with none of his attempts being successful. Each time, Odinga has alleged electoral fraud. In 1997, he finished third as the candidate of the National Development Party, NDP. In 2007, he ran again for the presidency under the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, and lost to Mwai Kibaki. In 2013, 2017, and 2022, Odinga was the runner-up as a candidate for the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy, CORD, National Super Alliance, NASA, and Azimio la Umoja respectively. After his loss, he filed for petition against President-elect William Ruto at the Supreme Court of Kenya. The court decided against him, and Odinga pledged to respect its ruling. Raila Odinga was born at the Anglican Church Missionary Society Hospital in Maseno, Kisumu District, Nyanza Province on January 7, 1945 to Mary Juma Odinga and Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. His father served as the first vice president of Kenya under President Jomo Kenyatta. He is a member of the Luo ethnic group. He went to Kisumu Union Primary, Miranda Primary in Bondo and Miranda High School where he studied until 1962, when he was transferred by his father to Germany. He spent the next 2 years at the Herder Institution, which trained foreign students in the German language and was part of the philological faculty at the University of Leipzig in East Germany. He received a scholarship that in 1965 sent him to the Technische Hochschule, Technical College, of Magdeburg, now a part of Otto von Guericke University Magdeburg, in the GDR. In 1970, he graduated with a certificate in welding. While studying in East Germany during the Cold War as a Kenyan, he was able to visit West Berlin through the checkpoint Charlie. When visiting West Berlin, he used to smuggle goods not available in East Berlin and bring them to his friends in East Germany. Odinga returned to Kenya in 1970, and in 1971 he founded the Standard Processing Equipment Construction and Erection Ltd., later renamed East African Spectre, the only company manufacturing liquid petroleum gas cylinders in Kenya. In 1974, Odinga was appointed Group Standards Manager of the Kenya Bureau of Standards. After holding this position for 4 years, he was promoted to be the Deputy Director in 1978, a post he held until his 1982 detention. At 3 a.m. on Sunday, August 1, 1982, a group of soldiers from the Kenya Air Force led by Senior Private Hezekiah Okyuka attempted to overthrow the government of then-President Daniel Arap Moi. After the failed attempt to overthrow him, President Moi reorganized Kenya's security architecture, staffing it with his loyalists, and then he ensured a law was passed in parliament that gave him emergency powers while placing the provincial administration under the office of the president. Odinga was arrested and charged with treason after being accused of being among the masterminds of the 1982 coup. He was released 6 years later in February 1988 but detained again in August of the same year to be released in June 1989. In an era of unrelenting human rights abuse by the Kenyan government, Odinga was placed under house arrest for 7 months after evidence seemed to implicate him along with his late father Odinga Odinga for collaborating with the plotters of a failed coup attempt against President Daniel Arap Moi in 1982. Hundreds of Kenyan civilians and thousands of rebel soldiers died in the coup. Several foreigners also died. Odinga was later charged with treason and detained without trial for 6 years. A biography released 14 years later in July 2006, apparently with Odinga's approval, indicated that Odinga was far more involved in the attempted coup than he had previously admitted. After its publication, some members of parliament in Kenya called for Odinga to be arrested and charged, but the statute of limitations had already passed and the information contained in the biography did not amount to an open confession on his part. Among some of his most painful experiences was when his mother died in 1984, but the prison wardens took 2 months to inform him of her death. He was released on February 6, 1988 only to be rearrested in September 1988 for his pro-democracy and human rights agitation at a time when the country continued to descend deep into the throes of poor governance and the despotism of single-party rule. Multi-party democracy Kenya was then, by law, a one-party state. His encounters with the authoritarian government generated an aura of intrigue about him, and it was probably due to this that his political followers christened him Agwambo, Luo for the mystery or unpredictable, or Jacom, meaning chairman. Odinga was released on June 12, 1989, only to be incarcerated again on July 5, 1990, together with Kenneth Matiba, and former Nairobi Mayor Charles Rubia, both multi-party system and human rights crusaders. Odinga was finally released on June 21, 1991, and in October he fled the country to Norway amid indications that the increasingly corrupt Kenyan government was attempting to assassinate him without success. At the time of Odinga's departure to Norway, the Forum for the Restoration of Democracy, FORD, a movement formed to agitate for the return of multi-party democracy to Kenya, was newly formed. In February 1992, Odinga returned to join FORD, then led by his father Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. He was elected vice chairman of the General Purposes Committee of the party. In the months running up to the 1992 general election, FORD split into FORD Kenya, led by Odinga's father Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, and FORD Asili led by Kenneth Matiba. Odinga became FORD Kenya's deputy director of elections. Odinga won the Langata constituency parliamentary seat, previously held by Philip Leakey of KANU. Odinga became the second father of multi-party democracy in Kenya after Kenneth Matiba. When Jaramogi Oginga Odinga died in January 1994 and Michael Wamalwa Kijana succeeded him as Ford Kenya chairman, Odinga challenged him for the party leadership. The elections were marred by controversy, after which Odinga resigned from Ford Kenya to join the National Development Party, NDP. In his first bid for the presidency in the 1997 general election, Odinga finished third after President Moi, the incumbent, and Democratic Party candidate Mwai Kibaki. He however retained his position as the Langata MP. Odinga led the formation of a new opposition outfit, the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, and orange was the symbol for the no vote in the constitutional referendum. In January 2006, Odinga was reported to have told police that he believed his life was in danger, having received assassination threats. Having lost the 2017 election to Uhuru Kenyatta and boycotted the rerun, Odinga had himself sworn in as the people's president. Miguna, who administered the oath, was deported, while Odinga faced no consequences. He went on to have a handshake and take part in government decision-making. In March 2018, Raila and Uhuru had a political handshake intended to cool the political temperatures after the 2017 general elections. The handshake resulted in William Ruto being sidelined in the government he formed with Uhuru Kenya, with Raila Odinga being elevated to de facto deputy president of the Republic of Kenya. The handshake gave birth to the Building Bridges Initiative alias BBI. Odinga was appointed High Representative for Infrastructure Development at the African Union Commission in 2018. He was relieved of his duties by the entity on February 23, 2023, the day after he incited his supporters to violence through mass action. On December 10, 2021, Odinga announced that he will be eyeing a fifth stab at the presidency, putting an end to months of suspense after his surprise truce with President Kenyatta. His announcement was made while launching the Azimio la Umoja Convention, which would be his vehicle to State House, held at the Kasarani Stadium, Nairobi. Odinga has accrued several nicknames during his political career. These include Tinga, Hummer, Baba, Jackom, and Agwambo. On July 12, 2007, with Kibaki's re-election bid drawing close, Odinga alleged that the government was withholding identity cards from voters in opposition strongholds with the intention to skew the election in favor of Kibaki. He also claimed that the intended creation of 30 new constituencies was a means by the government to fraudulently engineer victory in the December 2007 parliamentary election. In August 2007, the Odinga's own Orange Democratic Movement Kenya suffered a setback when it split into two, with Odinga becoming head of the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, while the other faction, the ODMK, was headed by Kalonzo Musyoka, who parted ways with Odinga. The next presidential election in which Odinga was to run was the 2013 March poll, involving Kibaki's handover of power. Uncertainty loomed over Odinga's main rivals, Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto, who had both been indicted by the ICC of The Hague for their alleged role in the 2007 election violence. Despite their pending case, the duo had been nominated by the Jubilee Party with Uhuru as presidential candidate and Ruto as running mate. Many felt they were unfit to run for office before clearing their names from such serious crimes, while others felt that their opponents were trying to unfairly exploit the situation by eliminating them from the race and pave the way for their easy victory. On January 30, Odinga staged a swearing-in ceremony in Nairobi where he named himself People's President. Following this ceremony, TV stations across Kenya were taken off air. A month and a half later, on March 9, Odinga and President Uhuru Kenyatta made a joint televised appearance in which they referred to each other as brothers, and agreed to put aside political differences to allow Kenya to move forward. Odinga's political ideology can be loosely styled as social democracy, more closely aligned with American left-wing politics. His position was once in favor of a parliamentary system, as seen when he initially backed a constitution giving executive powers to a prime minister, but he subsequently changed to support a presidential system with a devolved power structure, which is reflected in Kenya's current constitution. Among others, Odinga is seen as one of the main forces behind the devolution now enshrined in Kenya's constitution as an essential part of Kenya's governance system. This was inspired by a feeling that all successive governments under the centralized power structure had consistently abused that power to favor certain areas along political or ethnic lines while denying many regions access to resources and development because of their ethnicity or perceived disloyalty. Devolution aimed to address this and guarantee regions their fair share of resources regardless of their political affiliation or ethnicity. Due to an economic downturn and extreme drought, Odinga has called for the suspension of taxes on fuels and certain foods that disproportionately impact the poor. Odinga has supported an element of state welfare in the form of cash transfer programs to low-income people. This is currently implemented but in a limited way to poor, elderly people. Baptized as an Anglican Christian in the Church Missionary Society, CMS, in his childhood, Odinga later became a born-again Christian and is a communicant member of All Saints Cathedral in Nairobi. Odinga is married to Ida Odinga, Ida Enianga Oyo. They live in Karen, Nairobi, and have a second home at Central Farm in Shaya County. The couple had 4 children: Fidel, 1973 to 2015, Rosemary, born 1977, Raila Jr., born 1979, and Winnie, born 1990. Fidel was named after Fidel Castro and Winnie after Winnie Mandela. Winnie is currently studying Communication and International Area Studies as a double major student at Drexel University in Philadelphia. She is also a Kenyan representative at East Africa Legislative Assembly, EALA. In an interview with BBC News in January 2008, Odinga asserted that he was the first cousin of US President Barack Obama through Obama's father. However, Barack Obama's paternal uncle denied any direct relation to Odinga, stating Odinga's mother came from this area, so it is normal for us to talk about cousins. But he is not a blood relative. Odinga briefly played soccer for Lugo Union, now Gor Mahia, as a midfielder. Odinga was appointed by the African Union to mediate the 2010-2011 Ivorian crisis, which involved Alassane Ouattara and Laurent Gbagbo. Odinga wrote Flame of Freedom, a 1,040-page autobiography which talks about his life from childhood. It was launched on October 6, 2013 in Kenya and subsequently in United States on October 15, 2013. He was accompanied by a number of Kenyan county governors. Thank you for watching this video.